I gotta say, I'm proud of AINZ. He really turned his life around and became a nice skeleton who helps little girls collect herbs in the garden or the forest and then simultaneously one-shot KOs a basilisk and basically proves that he is a one-man army. But jokes aside, there was a decent amount of people who walked into episode 1 just based on my own comment section, what I saw online, that people were like, I was expecting discount AINZ, but honestly, Skeletonite turned out to be something of its own identity. It was a thoroughly enjoyable watch, and I completely agreed with that assessment. And seeing episode 2, which I think as a whole episode was a bit slower and maybe not as crazy in tone as maybe the debut episode, but it didn't change the fact that I had a grin on my face watching this adventure, which I didn't expect to have a fight scene as cool as what we got, but it was a welcome bonus, especially after the fact that we got another content warning. Given what we saw in this episode and how it didn't go as crazy as the first, I think the reason that there's still content warnings is because they actually show a lot of blood, which is a little surprising given the fact that I think the internet as a collective whole has gotten pretty numb to violence, so I don't think we need it anymore. But I think it does represent that this show isn't going to pull its punches, that when they kill a monster, it's not going to be like, it's just going to disintegrate immediately. Like, that corpse is going to be laying there, head and all. And I love what they ended up doing with the very end there, where you have this army who seems to be a king with them, and you see this army, they're turned to stone, they're killing it, and then they ultimately win, right? Honestly thought they were all going to get obliterated. But they did something more effective. I think it was like 15 dead, 38 injured, something along that nature, to kill one of these creatures. We saw our boy, while holding a little girl, doing these like little teleport maneuvers, and then just, one-shot KOs with this beautifully animated attack, while simultaneously having basically defense arts that can stop poisonous fogs and other things like that. So they represented how strong he is just on what we witnessed, the visual level, the skill level, but then they showed us what an army is capable of doing with the exact same creature, and it highlights how much of a one-man army he is. For a skeleton who's doing his best to basically take the mundane jobs and not go notice, he very much is getting roped into things that are going to be hard to ignore, and there's going to come a point that I imagine by the midway point of this season, the episode 5 through 7 mark, eventually someone in a very powerful role is going to recognize that this man is a one-man army. He literally can't change his outfit, he's in royal-looking armor. Eventually there's going to be enough rumblings about someone who looks like he's the personal bodyguard of the king himself, and how wherever he goes, these weird things keep happening. Eventually, the helmet's going to come off, and it'll be an interesting turn of events. Based on what we know of his skeleton avatar here, it does seem like a video game skin. I know there was some confusion. Hell, I even raised an eyebrow or two about a skeleton eating and drinking. Like, well, why does he need to do that? But it very much gives me the impression that it's working like a video game system. Think of League of Legends, right? You pick your different skin. Ultimately, it doesn't change anything, it's just how it looks. So it almost feels like the skeleton doesn't actually change his actual form. He functions like a human would, he just visually looks like a skeletal monster. And I think that's a cool concept because it lets him still feel a human. He can eat, he can drink, he can probably get drunk, I imagine. It's just a fun visual gag, but you can see how it could ruin his life because if he was to take that helmet off in the village, they're going to raise their pitchforks at him. For the people who think, he can just keep his armor on the entire time. Should he have any long-term connections, he eventually will have to explain why he can't take his helmet off. For right now, he can get out of going to dinner with people. He can get out of taking his armor off because he's on duty. But if he has to be in the service of a king, eventually the king's going to say, take your helmet off. Well, why don't you want to take your helmet off, right? So I think it's a pretty fun concept overall, while knowing when to be mature in the right ways. Last week with the horrible bandits who immediately got what they deserved, this week with actually showing a pretty brutal death scene for a creature. Sure, it wasn't humans, but it still was, pretty graphic, all things considered, especially when you compare a lot of death scenes with creatures or mythical beings in anime in recent memory, right? I think the idea of a girl just wanting to hire a bodyguard so she could make her mother's life better and easier now that their father's gone is a pretty sweet concept, and I think it immediately makes you understand that this man, if you had any doubts after him killing the horrible bandits and saving those women last week, he is a good, genuine guy who may be a little nerdy and talk about the video games he plays, but he's not a piece of shit. He's just a genuinely wholesome guy, and I think that's what makes arcs so rootable. Because, we have so many times where you have either super righteous or just super evil characters, right? And I can love anything in that spectrum, from the evil to the good to the in the middle. But I think it's nice to see a man who's not afraid to get his hands dirty and can recognize people who need to die, like in episode 1, and also recognizes that even if it is a living creature that probably did no harm in terms of just generally living, I mean, he's probably being sent there, seen by the bracelet on the ankles, like someone's forcing a creature that might have just lived its days peacefully elsewhere, but it needs to die, and it got killed. But like I said earlier in the video, like, the production for the fight scene was interesting because it started off not anything too crazy. It wasn't boring, but it's not what I would call exciting. He was just kind of jumping around. It was cool to see how no matter what this creature did, he would be able to evade it. But then it came down to the shield, right? And you just see the amazing, almost like shield hero maneuver there, and it was great. But then when he does his like final attack and you see the almost like sparkles and the almost like bubbles in the air, I don't know, just the way the lighting captured everything going on there, that was a pretty amazing fight scene that turned from, this is enjoyable, I'm not bored watching it, to holy shit, that was actually pretty damn incredible. And you gotta love the voice acting from our boy, like the dramatic shots of his helmet, like they'll do like this little shaky cam, and then one of his eyes will glow blue or something. I love the dramaticness in something that is not actually like too dramatic, all things considered, with what we're experiencing, but it just leaves me rolling. And I love just seeing the boy just get, he just loves his liquor, he loves his food, he's just enjoying his life. I'm gonna go take maybe a bit of a harder challenge tomorrow. My boy, if only you knew, you just did what an entire army just did. Like, you are OP despite not recognizing it, even with some of the subtle remarks. Was it always this powerful? Though it was cute to see the new creature that's going to be tagging along. It seems like the girl we got teased in last week in terms of the alleyway scene will probably be the main party member that will stick with him, alongside this creature who went from, a little bit of a vicious fuzzball to probably one of the most adorable kind of companions this anime season's gonna have to offer. I mean, Skeletonite sold me with episode 1. It didn't need to do anything too crazy this week to sell me on continuing to watch it, but with the fight scene, getting more into the personality of Ark as a person, how genuinely good he is, he doesn't make you raise any red flags. You just know you can trust in this character, and I love how it looks personally, especially with the background details. The trees and the forest, like, it just looked crisp, it looked clean, and it's a fun show to follow. It's fun, it's brutal, and it doesn't go comedic when it needs to be brutal, right? Episode 1 did an amazing job. Episode 2 with the brutality of the death scenes and even seeing the general soldiers petrified, and the aftermath, which you don't get to see too often if you're just going to show like a side army doing something similar to what our main character did. You literally saw soldiers grieving and crying and breaking down because their comrades were turned to stone or just outright killed. And that type of, humanity isn't explored enough, I find, in shows like these. So it's great to see the Skeletonite do it with grace. But thoughts, if you have any on episode 2, going to be carrying on with this one? Did this one sell you even more than episode 1 did? Or honestly, you're just going to move on from this one? Because I know it does happen for some people. So let me know what you're feeling down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.